By the end of 2002, Kenya was in a state of desolation. The economy had slumped to a negative 2% growth rate. All indications were that poverty was beginning to bite. Insecurity, unemployment, and a dilapidated infrastructure were all threatening to consume our nation. Kenyan businesses were shutting down and international investors beginning to look elsewhere.
There was a hue and cry in the industry where manambas would, fight to have a passenger's luggage, the other one takes the passenger's child, the passenger himself is taken to another place. There was no order at all.
And at one point, nurses from the Kenyatta National Hospital were raped on their way from work somewhere near Kawangware.
I traveled on Thika Highway for many years, and I know the problems of the traffic jams.
It was very narrow, very devastated road for many, many years.
But then,
extremely happy to address you today. The economy, which you all know has been underperforming since the last decade, is going to be my first priority. My government will embark on policies geared to economic reconstruction, employment creation, and immediate rehabilitation of the collapsed infrastructure. My government will closely work with the private sector and with our external partners to fulfill these promises. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, nisaidie.
Since 2002, there has been a radical transformation to the Nairobi skyline. Beyond the infrastructure, the security has also been improved to be the dream Nairobi residents hoped for. In the early stages of President Kibaki's tenure, he established the Presidential Private Sector Working Forum based at the President's office, led by the Kenya Private Sector Alliance.
With the coming in of the NAC government, there was a feeling that the private sector needs to be a bit more organized. Not only to be organized, but to participate and be a partner in economic recovery strategy that the government was going to start implementing. And so they challenged the private sector and asked them to organize themselves into an organization that they could speak to as with one voice, even as they engage the sectoral organizations on sectoral issues. And that's how Kenya Private Sector Alliance came into being in 2003.
During that period, we were discussing that what they wanted to do. And it was very fluent in their own way what they wanted to do, how they wanted to change the path, the way we had run 24 years with the Moi government.
That really created a game changer in terms of the way the economy of the country was being managed. So there was now more of a participative role at that point in time compared to the previous regime, where it was more of do what we tell you as a government.
Government engagement has become far more better, and this was because we had the presidential roundtables, we also had the Prime Minister's roundtables, the Speaker's roundtables, Chief Justice roundtables, where we were able to discuss and negotiate and thrash out issues together, sitting on the same side, rather than oppose each other. And we found our problems, we found our solutions, and we started implementing them.
We had an incredible surprise because the government was serious in engaging with the private sector.
Over the 10 years of Kibaki's presidency, Kepsa witnessed President Kibaki transform Kenya's economy by tackling corruption, unemployment, education, infrastructure, and security.
We saw massive investment in roads, we saw massive investment in ports and airports, we saw massive investment in energy generation and distribution. More importantly, we saw the great transformation of the telecommunication sector, particularly the fiber optic cable. Also, the exercise of power and democratic institutions that were created, particularly the judiciary, the legislature, and of course the executive. Giving the executive independence enabled people to exercise their skills and knowledge enabling the economy to grow.
The expansion of banking services to all parts of our country has led to increased access to credit, especially to micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. Increased credit facilities due to expansion of the banking sector and adoption of mobile money solutions has caused the bankable population to grow to over 20 million Kenyans that could exploit more investment opportunities.
I saw better linkages between business organizations like Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Kenya Bankers Association, and Kepsa with government on a very formalized basis in which the specific agendas government was trying to implement from an economic point of view were discussed with the business organizations, and business organizations were actually able to provide input into the process of economic reform.
For us at Equity Bank, we have moved from a 200 million balance sheet company to 270 billion shilling company. Huge growth. Our number of customers have moved from 1 million customers to 7.5 million customers in just under 10 years. So that is the transformation we have seen.
Hospitals generally were not accessing finance from banks. Many of them were small or owned by communities. When interest rates went down from the 30-something%, so at one time we borrowed money at 30-something%, even 40-something%, and came down to about 12-13%, it meant we could begin to invest. And that was very beneficial because we could begin to expand our infrastructure very, very significantly. And many of the providers, the hospitals, have actually doubled their capacity or even tripled their capacity. So one of the good things that did happen is that our very own president would get treatment, would seek medical assistance from local institutions.
This is to show that the local health facilities, we are up to par by any international standards.
10 years ago, just 10,000 Kenyans had access to ARV drugs, compared to the current 500,000. Over 20 million mosquito nets have been distributed, while drugs for malaria, tuberculosis and HIV/AIDS are provided for free in public health facilities. All this increased access to healthcare continues to improve the health of Kenya's population and workforce, increasing productivity and reducing inactivity in the private sector.
Health, education, water, sanitation and environment are connected, and these are the main contributors to actually the world wealth and economy. So President Kibaki focused on this very, very keenly, and especially education. And this means that the people who are educated are likely to take care of themselves better, because we say prevention is always better than cure.
Microphone testing, microphone check 1, check 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, check mic, Domi's checking. Body's in our phone.
By the time he left office,
Yes, we have 150. We don't have 150, okay? Yeah!
The free primary education is a game changer for this economy. 10,000 orphans had got scholarships to go to secondary school, and 1,300 Kenyan students had managed to get scholarships to go to university. An amazing support by a leader. And it's that support that made global institutions like MasterCard, USAID, DFID, KFW, to all come and team with us to scale a project that they so had the support of the government, and specifically His Excellency the President.
during Kibaki's period in office, 15 new universities were launched. The number of university students grew from 75,000 in 2002 to more than 250,000 in 2012.
In a way, there is a correlation, especially the
coming to fruition of the 22 public universities is basically also in preparation to be able to absorb the students who will have been taken into free primary school, which added over 1 million students, and those who have gone all the way to KCSE will, in 2015, be eligible for admission to universities. And therefore, one expected also there ought to be a transition rate improvement to other tertiary educational institutions.
These improvements in access to education have greatly improved Kenya's workforce and future workforce, making them an attractive source of productivity for business in the country. The Kenya Youth Empowerment Project, running from 2011 to 2014, is a Government of Kenya project whose overall goal is to improve youth employability in Kenya. The objective of the program is to provide training and internship to the youth in the private sector. Its first cycle of 6 months proved to be successful. As of October 2012, 71% of the youths who enrolled into the program were either in wage employment or self-employed.
We have seen where the partnership between government and private sector comes in very handy. A case in point is the Kenya Youth Empowerment Program, which is a partnership between the private sector and government that has a training component focusing on core business skills, which looks at actually how to train young people on the basic skills they need to start and run their business. So in addition to that, again, we have the Youth Enterprise Development Fund that has also partnered with private sector institutions to leverage the fund and also to be able to disburse the funds. And then now what is currently being focused on the issue of affirmative action as far as public procurement is concerned, to ensure again these young people can be able to access a market to dispose their goods. So there's a multiply effect when you empower young entrepreneurs. They not only empower themselves to have a livelihood, but they also create businesses for other businesses around them and can also create employment directly by employing people.
In 2003, there were less.
At that time, we had to get the internet gateway through what was called JumboNet, which was owned or managed by Telecom Kenya at that time. And there were lots of constraints. But when President Kibaki came into power, that changed. The sector was liberalized and that monopoly was lifted. That helped us to manage our solutions end to end. Then, of course, the major one was the coming of the undersea fiber optic cables. The government spearheaded that process and partnered with the private sector to ensure that the Thames cable eventually came to the coastal town of Mombasa, and that has made a whole difference in the industry.
The ICT sector has grown by 20% annually and has accounted for a quarter of total economic growth in the last decade, accompanied by the creation of thousands of jobs. The infrastructure has catapulted Kenya on the world arena as a leader in mobile applications and more IT services. We have seen innovation hubs grow and proven the need for a techno city. The former president had consistently supported innovation and broke ground for the Konza City project, yet again placing Kenya on the global arena as the Silicon Savannah.
The idea, of course, for creating a large number of jobs in ICT, plus then a large number of jobs in supporting activities like, hotels and conference centers and transport and shops and schools and everything that has to go there, that's big thinking. You just look at all these stories about farmers connecting with markets to get information on prices, and you look at those schools that have made it their business through the boards of governors, through the community, through Harambee, through Computers for Schools Kenya, through whatever means, to at least have some way of being connected.
Konza is a clear indication that this nation is prepared to become a digital era nation. So we all must get onto it. We must train our teachers in order for them to educate our kids. And everybody, even those who didn't learn it, should go back somewhere and learn how to use the new methodology.
By end of 2012, micro and small enterprises were able to create up to 80% of jobs in the country. They also contributed to about 20% of GDP. In 2011, roughly 500,000 jobs were created, of which 85% belonged in the MSC sector. Despite this significant role of MSCs in Kenya's economy, there was no legal system specifically tailored to regulate these enterprises.
The president assented to the MSC bill that passed through parliament, and he assented to it on the 31st December 2012, within which we are going to create 3 institutions, namely the registrar of MSCs, the MSC fund, and the MSC tribunal. These are key pillars towards the development and the promotion of small businesses in the country. It's a first in this continent. One of the biggest impact on policy that the president pushed through that affected greatly, positively, the development of the small businesses was the decree stopping the government from importing furniture and instructing government to buy from the local manufacturers. That was meant to encourage, promote, and develop the micro and small enterprises sector. You remember the hawkers some time back? They were removed in town in a very orderly manner when we opened the Mudhurwa market. That was an initiative that the president came to open. That was meant to harmonize the operations of the small business, small traders in a very organized manner, as opposed to what we were used to sometime earlier, the running battles and the confusion. So the formation of that market and several other markets that came into being.
Hello, coming to you live from the Safari Park Hotel. Wapi.
Foods and just have one license. The only thing people need to know where and that license is for. Yeah, so he has really helped the Kenyans in regards of the policies. Because many policies were done, but they were not effective. They were just government. So during his tenure, we can really be proud and say, he gave money to the village, he gave money to the youth, he did what Kenyans were expecting. He brought this country where we are.
President Kibaki addressed constraints in the various modes of transport by building new roads and expanding.
We see the roads we have, we complain of maintenance of our vehicles are very high.
Hello, we're coming to you live from the Safari Park International Hotel, where Kepsa is currently hosting a luncheon in honor of President Kibaki. Now, this is basically a way for the business community to show that the president, how much he was able to do for them during his 10-year term. It's during his 10-year term that economic growth grew at an average of 4.46% compared to the previous 2.2% over the last 24 years. Now, the basic community is basically here trying to encourage a president who basically encouraged private-public partnerships, which saw a lot of investments made into the economy. Economic growth took off and even
in the infrastructure. They have to be infrastructure policy, no economy, and no
One, we grow our tea coffee. We don't grow tea coffee in the coast. But the exit out of 95% of our produce is in the coast. So we go to transport our tea coffee from this valley, from the central part of Kenya, into the coast. Now,
Well, thank you, Edith. We're coming to you live from the Safari Park International Hotel here along Thika Road, where the Kenya Private Sector Alliance is currently hosting a luncheon in honor of President Mwai Kibaki, or I should say retired President Mwai Kibaki. Now, this is basically a way for the business community to kind of show the president how much they appreciated his leadership under his 10-year term. It's during this term that economic growth grew at an average of 4.6% during the last 10 years. This is huge considering that over the last 24 years, economic growth only took over by 2.2%. Now, under President Kibaki's rule, he encouraged a lot of public-private partnerships. He saw a lot of investments made into the economy. He saw economic growth take off, and at even one point reached a high of 7.2%. We well know that all this slumped down to about 1.8% after the post-election violence, but the encouragement that he gave the business community has seen the economy steadily rise and actually come back to about 4.5% over the last 5 years. Now, we will be bringing you live pictures from here as we continue having this luncheon hosted in honor of President Mwai Kibaki. But for now, I hand it back over to you, Edith, in studio.
And airports modernized and expanded. But the most ambitious development project President Kibaki initiated is the London Airport South in Sudan, Ethiopian Transport Corridor, also known as LAPSET. The launching of this project will bring many benefits, among them opening up the entire
corridor
markets in South Sudan
and Ethiopia to the Kenyan business community. To decongest the port of Mombasa, a rapid results initiative was activated by President Kibaki's government. To increase capacity at the port, the channel was dredged and baths and a new container.
Since over the last few years, we now have a single land act. There's others that are auxiliary to it, and within that, it regulates or structures the whole process of land administration. That is a very historic thing. It sounds like a small thing, but the impact that it's going to have on increasing efficiency and helping the system become more transparent and more intuitive is going to be tremendous. The building code, after struggling from that time, was finally done. And it's now flexible. It allows investors to use alternative technologies, which will be very important as we try to bring down the cost of housing for Kenyans. And the building industry has been transformed.
Since 2002, Kenya's real estate market, once exclusively the domain of the wealthy upper class, has experienced a steady 10 to 20% growth annually. When Kibaki took over, the value of Kenya's approved building plans stood at $48 million. In 2012, the plans stood at a whopping $2.4 billion. It was during Kibaki's tenure that futuristic gated communities and new cities such as Statue City, Northlands Estate and Thika Greens came to be.
The real estate market has grown more than doubled. If you look at the prices, 10 years back, you could buy an apartment, a property, a land in the areas at fairly good price. Today, you pay a lot more because the demand has grown. The real estate market has really grown. I would say it has definitely grown. In the 10 years, it has grown more than 150%.
Between 2004 and 2008, growth in the agricultural sector had surpassed the target of 3.1% and reached an average of 5.2% by 2007. In 2010, growth in the agricultural sector even reached 6.4%.
More than profit-wise, yes, in our agriculture company, we have nearly doubled our profits. We have grown tremendously. But you know, as agriculture is a price factor because it depends on the world economy, world market, especially in coffee and tea, so it depends, it varies quite a bit. Coffee, like in 2011, was a fantastic price, but now suddenly, if you look at it now at 2012, 2013, the prices have depressed because of world market prices. Based on those ones, you can't actually evaluate, but when you look at the production, the amount of coffee which has been exported has been better than what it was before in 2002.
With all the development taking place, the need to have supplementary energy that is sustainable has not been ignored. The government has invested almost $100 million to the geothermal project. The investments that the Kibaki government made in the electricity sector increased the connectivity of businesses to the national grid. When President Kibaki came to office, the installed electricity capacity in Kenya was 1,160 megawatts. At the time of leaving office, installed capacity stood at 1,672 megawatts, implying a growth of 44%.
We've sat in the presidential private sector roundtable and discussed the issue of power, and we've had the Ministry of Energy outlining to us their plans on how they intend to halve the cost of power by 2015-2016. And all those arrangements are in progress through the various geothermal projects. Kenya Power, there has been challenges with, for example, regular power. There's been challenges with the cost of power. But we're finding these are being addressed in a more transparent manner. We know what costs we expect to pay. If there's an increase, we know we are being told about it. In the past, it was very random, and it was very difficult to plan on costs of power.
The new constitution has brought services closer to the people. The speed of litigation has greatly improved, in turn improving the business environment. The fight against corruption has given equal opportunity to competent suppliers.
I would say the last 2 years of President Kibaki